All right. You can hear me. Yay. That's good to know. Okay, I'm going to end. Okay. Hold on, everyone. I'm trying to get this up and going. Sorry, this has been awkward. We have been having some weird things come up. Okay. So, it looks like chat's working. I can see all your chats, so that's good. All right. Hello, everyone. I am so sorry that that didn't work. I just did the thing wrong, but now I did it right, and it should work wonderfully from this time forward. And I'm a little frazzled because we just had to switch everything really, really fast. Okay, but here we are on the correct live stream link with the working audio, which wasn't happening a moment ago. And thank you, Devin. I appreciate that. What I was saying is that I just hope you all know that you are loved. And I love you. And I welcome you, those who are here live and those who will watch this later. I welcome everyone. And I welcome you with love. Now, we're going to talk about honing perception today. And I'm going to go ahead and share something. Here we go. All right. So this is what we're looking at today. We're looking at this is on the 13th season site. If you go, the 13 seasons up here and go down to Hone Perception, you can see this. And this is all ready to go, and this is what we're talking about. Before we get going with this, let's do a quick little meditation to just have ourselves be in the zone to be ready to learn today. So I invite everyone to please close your eyes with me. Put your hands on your chest and just be aware of your heartbeat. Notice your heart beating. Be very aware of each beat. Let yourself be grateful that your heart beats and that you're alive. Your heart beats without you having to think about it. Say, thank you, heart. And you get to live and experience each moment of each day. You can be grateful for that. Take in a deep breath. Let it out. Let that, at each breath, and your heart be all that exists. Breathe in. Let out. Open your eyes. Be aware of something that you see. Notice it. Let your sensitivity increase by 10% and notice a new detail about what you see. Have joy in it because it is. Go ahead and shake your body. Shake out any tension. Shake out anything in you that's just not going to help you today. And now we're ready to learn together. We're learning about honing perception. We got this page up and going just a couple days ago. I actually got this up on Thanksgiving morning. My wife Jamie and I we drove to Idaho, and on our drive, we spent our drive talking about these principles and trying to understand them better while we drove. And a lot of really powerful insights came to us that are really helpful to us. And I tried to capture all of our insights here and what's written here. But we were kind of getting it up. We were kind of rushing and getting up quick in spite of the holiday and all the holiday things going on. If there's any typos here, please be forgiving and go ahead and message me and let me know that you found some typos and I can fix them. These 9 principles here under Hone Perception will help you actually experience your life. It says here at the top, have you ever felt disconnected from what you're experiencing? This happens to me all the time. I'm living life, or at least I'm alive, but I'm not really experiencing things fully. I'm not experiencing my perception because I'm too distracted in my head to really experience what's going on around me. Thich Nhat Hanh, who left this world recently, which is sad. He's the author of Peace is Every Step, which is right here. This really, really amazing book, which I highly recommend picking up a copy of this book. And it has brief little tiny chapters. Like each chapter is like a page long. And so I found it really helpful to pick up this book. My wife discovered it. And I find it really helpful. And I've done this, went through the whole book, and then I went through the whole book a half a time again. And I find it really helpful to just read one of the chapters once each day. And then just try practicing each chapter has each chapter has a little bit of, a little bit of tip or a little life hack for how to be present or mindful and how to really experience your life. I really recommend this book. You can pick it up and maybe read one chapter a day or one chapter a week or something and just practice that one little practice. One of the things he talks about in this book is that you are what you experience. So whatever you're giving your attention to, you become that. And that's like a Buddhist idea. And he says, so if you're not giving your attention to anything fully, then you're not really anything. And you're going through life as a ghost. And everything around you becomes a ghost to you. I think that's really profound. Now, if you read through this section here, it has lots of advice in the form of these 9 principles that are listed here about how to really experience things with your senses, whatever's happening. And I think it's really good stuff. If you want to, though, you can do these 9 things, and they're really helpful. And as you go through them, some of them actually have like little kind of practices you can do embedded in the text you can try. And so you can go to 13seasons.org on your own later and read through those and do those. Today, though, for whatever reason, when I was preparing to talk with you all today, my intuition told me to focus less on physical senses and more on like the senses that deal with things we can't see, right? We have we can sense our emotions, for example, but you can't see or touch emotions. You don't use any of your 5, physical senses to sense your emotions, but boy, do you sense them. They're real energy that can be sensed. And we all are, made of energy fields, right? And you can be in a room and someone can walk in, you can just like know they're there no matter how quiet they are, right? Or I know I've had this experience so many times. I had it just this week where you're like walking around or doing something and then you look at someone and you're like watching them for some reason without really thinking about it or whatever, or not trying to be rude, but then they notice you and they like turn and look at you. Somehow, even though you're really far away, they just can tell they're being looked at, right? We have these 6 senses that are beyond, we have other senses beyond normal 5 senses that relate to like energy or spirit that are real senses. And I've had a lot of experience with these senses. And I'm going to invite you to have an open mind with me today and to explore those kind of senses. Now, when you do this, one thing to keep in mind is that perhaps anyone watching this live or later, when I say like energetic or spiritual senses, you may have had negative experiences with people who use words or terms related to spirituality or religion to do harm. And if people have used religion or spirituality to do harm, then, and thank you, Brendan, I'll see ya. If people have done that in your life, then I invite you, I just want to say that I'm sorry that happened to you. That sucks. I'm sorry you were hurt. And I invite you to participate in this experience in a way that's completely separate from that experience. I know a person who was raised in a religious household, and she was raised in that household, and it was abusive. Her dad was very religious and also abusive to his children at home, and he would participate in his religious community and sit and he had leadership. He had volunteer leadership positions that he did, and he sat in front of the congregation and looked holy and important, and he got a lot of ego from like being in front of everyone as like a religious leader, and that ego made him feel good. And then when he would go home, he would do many things that manipulated his children, engaged in sexual abuse, and also engaged in neglect. So emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. He would do those things. And this person I know grew up that way. And when she became an adult, she got all away from religion as fast as she could. And she could separate herself completely from religion every way she could, because, she'd been hurt so badly. And the way we're programmed, or the way our bodies are programmed, is that when something hurts us, we associate all sorts of feelings with it that'll help us avoid it so it doesn't hurt us again. And so she'd been hurt by her father in a religious context. And so she decided, so her body, attached emotions to that of disgust and fear and other emotions and anger that would keep her away from religion so she wouldn't get hurt again by someone like him. But then as time passed and she had her own kids and they got older, she had some experiences that led her to understand that it would be important for her children to have some form of spirituality in her life, So she started exploring every religion, every single religion. She went, all forms of Christianity, Buddhism, Taoism. She started just looking into all of them. And she was able to, but at this point in life, enough time had passed, and she'd been able to separate herself enough from the experience she grew up with that she could now look at spirituality, religion, a different kind of way. And she could say, my father did something with me that was wrong. And that's not religion. That's not spirituality. That's my dad doing something that's wrong. And then she was able to approach spirituality from a new way that was something completely different. And she actually ended up, in the end, after exploring all her options very thoroughly, she ended up choosing to participate in the very religion that she grew up in with her dad. But she says it's not the same. But if you talk to her, she says, I did not grow up with this religion. I grew up with my dad's terror. And I discovered this religion on my own when I was older. Now, in the context we're talking about today, though, it doesn't really matter to me if you use religion or not. Religion can be very helpful to people. It can be a really helpful guide. It can be a really helpful way to have community, and a community with shared beliefs. It can be really helpful to have that guidance. It can be really helpful to have ceremonies you participate in that help you to grow and heal. And the community is so important. Having a community that feels sacred can be so important. That said, though, in the context of what we're talking about today, I don't really care if you have anything to do with religion or not. I want to talk about spiritual senses, being able to sense the spiritual world. And that doesn't need to have anything to do with religion at all. And so I'm inviting you to open to the idea that you can sense spiritual things. And if you've been hurt by people using this kind of language, I invite yourself to just hear these words as brand new words that have nothing to do with what that person did. Now, if you look at these principles listed here on the screen, these 9 principles apply to making any senses stronger. So you could use these 9 principles to increase your vision, your experience with vision, your experience with hearing, your experience with touch. You can use any of these principles to taste. You can use these to have more profound experience with your food, right? To enjoy it more. These 9 principles we're going to talk about are useful for any kind of senses. The way I'm going to talk about them, though, is in terms of spiritual senses. Now, first here it says, increase the sensitivity of your senses. Senses are like a muscle. If you exercise them, they get stronger. You can increase the sensitivity of any sense, right? That's something you can learn to do. Now, when it comes to spiritual senses, I'll teach you something you can do right now that you can try with me that can increase the sensitivity of your spiritual senses. And this is an exercise you can just try day after day after day and see what happens and see how it helps you. Here's what you can do. Take your hands like this and rub them together. Become very aware of your hands. And what you're sensing as you rub your hands together. Keep doing it. And take your hands like this. And then put them on your heart, in your chest area. Just be aware of what you experience in your chest. I invite you now to experiment with me, experiment with prayer. So while you have your hands on your chest, go ahead and say a little prayer to whatever you see as as the higher power. It could be, you could call, the higher power God, Allah, Brahma, the universe, just the goodness of humanity, if that's what the shared goodness that humanity shares between them, love itself. You just go with like the sky if you want to, whatever, just something bigger than you, that's bigger and connected. So you address whatever you want to consider your higher power. And just ask a question. The question could be, are you there? Do you love me? What should I do? And just see what and be aware of your chest and see what you experience. And then, it's a little exercise. If you want to, you can try to increase your spiritual sensitivity. Just do that a little bit each day. Just go like this for a little while, your hands on your chest after you've done that. And then try addressing spirit or your higher power, whatever you want to call it, and just ask the question, and then just be still and aware of your chest and see what happens. Next principle here is focus your senses with patience. It takes patience to focus your senses. Imagine entering a dark room and you can't see anything, and you look around the dark room. And as you look around the dark room, you have your eyes open, it's just pitch dark, and your eyes slowly adjust and you slowly start being able to see things. That's being patient with your senses as they focus. So when it comes to spirituality, it's important to be patient. If you want to have some kind of spiritual experience, if you just rush it and are like, I want to have a spiritual experience right now, that's a great way to not have one. It's important. You gotta be patient with the process. It's just an essential piece of the whole thing. So if you do this little exercise, for example, you go like this, and you ask a question, you don't hear an answer or experience any kind of answer of any kind, that's fine. Just keep focusing on your chest and being aware of anything you experience there, and just sit there with focus, being patient. Just notice any little sensation or any little anything, and just be curious about it and keep trying. Use multiple senses. Okay. So, when you're experiencing like a waterfall, for example, it's really powerful to use multiple senses, right? To look at the waterfall and like see it with your eyes and fully experience waterfall with your eyes, but then bring in your hearing and hear what's going on. Bring in your touch and like feel the moisture in the air, right? And bring in, you can open your mouth and like taste the water droplets. What does the waterfall smell like? The more senses you bring in, the more joyfully you can experience something. And the same is true with spiritual senses. There's just different kinds of senses with which we can experience things spiritually, right? Some people like feel something that's kind of emotional, something like emotion as a spiritual sense. Some people experience something that's more like thought as a spiritual sense. Some people see things inside their head or inside themselves. They like have some kind of visual like something thing. And to some people, that visual thing might look kind of like imagination, but different somehow. And for other people, it might look like photorealistic, right? Some people like hear something when they approach spiritual things, and some people like feel energy in a way that's really hard to describe. There's lots of different ways that we can sense spiritual things. There's different kinds of spiritual senses. And it's powerful to bring in more than one of those together. And so as you explore spirituality, and you say, you put your hand on your chest and you say a little prayer. You might ask, like if you already have, or you start to have answers to things coming to you that way, then you can try bringing other senses. You can actually specifically request, ask a question and say, please answer me a new way, and be patient and see what new ways of experiencing things you start experiencing them. The more spiritual senses you have, the better. you have more ways to experience things. That's good. Augment your senses. Okay, this is a really neat one. So when it comes to physical senses, if you can't see very well, you can do things like put on glasses and you can see better, right? You could do a hearing aid, you can hear better, right? You can bring in tools that help your senses. And spiritual senses are the same way. I'll be right back. Let me grab something really fast. Okay, I'm back. So spiritual senses can be augmented too. And there's lots of different ways to augment spiritual senses, right? You can look at just being around people that are very spiritual. Something about them can rub off on you, and that can augment your spiritual senses. There's, sacred texts, things like that. Something I've found that's really powerful to augment spiritual senses, that I'm just telling you, I've just learned from my experience, is true and works, is with crystals. I have some crystals here. I have some theories about why this works. And here's this one. I don't 100% understand fully why this works, but I have theories. I personally believe in panpsychism. And panpsychism is a word that means everything has a soul, or everything has a psyche. By the way, the word psyche and the word soul are the same word in Greek, by the way. So everything has a soul, everything has a psyche. So it's my belief that even the smallest electron, right, has some form of intelligence. Everything has consciousness. And then when you work up to life forms like humans, the consciousness is much more complex than, but even an electron is aware it exists. And just diligently and obediently goes about generating negative charge and existing in a probability cloud, doing what it was made to do, and it does that with consciousness, right? That's my belief. Crystals are unique in that the atoms of a crystal are very, very, very highly organized. And people throughout history, in many different traditions, have used crystals or stones or sticks. They might call them a wand or a staff or something. They might give them different names. But they use, things from nature to experience and enhance in spirituality. And I think the reason this happens is because, like I said, everything has intelligence, right? And I think that certain crystals or things have a soul. They have have intelligence about them, have consciousness, and that they have a spiritual presence to them, and they can use their spiritual presence to interact with us and help us. And so you can call it, whatever you want to call it. You can call it a wand or a stick or a divining rod or a seer stone or, a crystal or I don't, whatever, or a friend or a tool, a spiritual aid, whatever you want to call it. But my experience has proven that when I have using certain crystals can enhance my spiritual senses. My experience has been that when you get a crystal, like this is just a bunch of citrine here, when you first start engaging with a crystal, that at first the consciousness of the crystal may be, what's the word? The consciousness of the crystal might be not very kind or loving or nice. But that you can help the crystal to become your friend and to become full of light and goodness and not evil. So many crystals on this planet have been harvested from the ground with greed and then, sold with greed. And so it's and there's a lot of pollution on our planet. It's no wonder that many crystals would have like a very negative force about them because they've been treated badly. And so the soul in them, in this, as the soul in them under this panpsychism way of thinking, the soul in those crystals is going to, have a very negative, heavy kind of feel. And if you try to use a crystal like that as part of spiritual practice, it's going to actually bring you down and not make you better. But if, on the other hand, you can help a crystal become good and full of light, then you can work with it, and it's like the crystal can give you some of its intelligence, some of its power, some of its consciousness to enhance your spiritual gifts. And it's a two-way relationship, right? You receive spiritual gifts. You receive spiritual perception that you couldn't have without the crystal's help. And the crystal can interact with the world in a way that it couldn't without you. Crystals are, they're intelligence, but they can't move or do anything. But if you use the crystal to have spiritual experiences that then help you live a better life, then the crystal is making you and the world better through you, right? And so the crystal gets the benefit of getting to have more agency and power in the world than it would have on its own. And so you and the crystal benefit, but the crystal needs to be good. So what I do is I take crystals, I wash them with water. That's a practice many people do with crystals. I wash them with water, and I'm washing them with water in order to, it's symbolic, right? I'm symbolically doing a little ceremony to say that I want this crystal to be clean of any negative influences. And I just wash water with that intention, and it helps. Like it helps the spiritual process to happen. And then I'm done washing with water. I take some oil and I put a little bit of oil on it. Oil, like olive oil, for example, it takes like hundreds or thousands of grapes to make a little bit of olive oil. And so it's like a lot of life force smashed in a little tiny area. And so putting some oil on it, is symbolic of adding a lot of life force or a lot of power, right? And then I rub oil all over it, and I think about the purpose I want the crystal to fill for me. I want to use this crystal for what purpose and what the purpose is. I think about that, and then I say a little prayer with my higher power for the crystal to be in a good place. And this is something I've learned on my own that's good. I've just learned by experience that it helps. And then I will take crystals, and when I'm meditating, I will use them. For example, and maybe like right now I have a crystal I don't have with me at the moment, but it's blue. And I find that when I meditate, if I stick it on my head and take a band and tie it to my head right here while I meditate, it helps me have more powerful spiritual experience while I'm meditating. It helps my body heal, and it helps me throughout the day live with greater mindfulness when I've done that in the morning. I found that, this citrine right here helps me process my emotions. This piece of quartz here seems to help my whole family to process the burdens and the emotional triggers that we inherited from our ancestors. This seems to help with that. So that's augmentation. I recommend giving crystals a shot. If you try this thing and you're like asking, you're do this and you go like this, and you're just not having the experience you would think you'd like to have, try getting a crystal. Go to a crystal shop or something and wash it and put oil on it and rub it and stuff, and then maybe put the crystal here against your heart and give it a chance again and see what happens. Next thing is focus on what helps. So here's the thing. This goes back to something we talked about earlier that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, where he says that whatever you give your attention to, you become that, right? So if you're not giving your attention to anything, you just become a ghost. But if you give your attention to something really negative, you tend to be if you give your attention to it for a little bit in order to understand it, it's not a big deal, right? You can give your attention to something negative in order to discover that it's negative. But once you discover it's negative, if you keep engaging with it, it's going to pull your spirit down. And so it's important to engage with positive things. This is one of the really valuable things about sacred texts, right? Sacred texts are, texts written by people throughout history who were trying to engage with sacred and divine and spiritual things the best way they knew how, and they recorded the experiences they had with the best way they could. And when we engage with those texts and read them, we engage with those spiritual experiences they had when they wrote them. We connect with that. And we get raised up in frequency to the frequency that those people were at, the frequency of light, when they wrote it. And that's really powerful, right? But this is, just focusing, giving your attention to things that invite love and gratitude and joy is good and will help you with spirituality. When you're doing this thing right here, if you don't know what else to do, maybe do you take a page from Mr. Rogers' playbook. Mr. Rogers, when he met with people sometimes and he wanted to help them, he would say, let's take 1 minute and set a timer. And it's just think about one person who has loved us. So you could do that, like think of someone who's loved you well, and while you have your do this thing, go like this, and then just spend a minute, set a timer and spend 1 minute just thinking about someone who loves you and has shown love to you selflessly. Just think about them for a minute. And that will get your spirit in a good place. That'll help. Discern the source. Okay, so when we have spiritual experiences, they come from spiritual beings. And some spiritual beings are good and loving and joyful, and others are malicious and want bad things for us. And so it's important to learn to discern which kind of being is talking to you, and if they're give attention give attention to things that are coming from beings that want good things for you and not beings that want bad things for you. One way you can tell the difference is when you're having a spiritual experience to just become very attentive, look at it, be very attentive to what you're experiencing, be aware of what you're experiencing, and look in it and say, when I'm engaged with this being, do I feel greater love, greater humility, greater peace and patience? Then you're probably doing okay. Do you feel like helping people more? Do you feel more connected to people afterwards? You're probably doing pretty good. If the experience leads you to be, because you have experiences with, frankly, evil spiritual beings that feel very good, right? But they feel good in a way that's counterfeit. So if you feel like really excited, like you're like, wow, I feel really, really excited in an impatient kind of way, or in a way that makes you think you're like better than other people because you're having this experience. So if you feel excited in a way that lacks humility and lacks patience or lacks love, I would be cautious of that. Now the next thing is interpretation. So it's important to interpret whatever experience you have spiritually, but interpret it. So you might have an experience like, whoa, I just experienced something spiritual, but like, what does it mean, right? What is it actually? What's the message that the experience is trying to get across to you? And so you got to be able to interpret it, right? Like, and we do this with our physical senses. Like you might hear something, you're like, what is that? I don't know what that is. I just hear something, but you probably had that experience. Like you hear, or maybe you smell something, you're like, what does that smell? I like it, but what is it? And you're trying to interpret it. And then you're persistent and you gather information and maybe bring in more senses. A lot of times you have to bring in multiple senses to interpret something, right? Because like you're like smelling it, you know what it is, then you see it and you're like, oh, it's pizza, right? And so be patient. Maybe bring in extra senses, ask more questions, and make sure that you're careful to carefully interpret what it is. Because you can have an experience that's from a good source, but your interpretation is skewed in a way that leads you down a path that doesn't end up very good for you. It's important to be careful with the interpretation. And if anyone has any questions with any of this, please throw it in the chat, or any comments or advice you would add. I'm watching the chat. And then next is reaction. So it's important to react intentionally. So if you're walking, one example I give on the website here, if you're walking down the street and there's like a root in your way, right? Like going across the sidewalk, and you see the root with your eyes, the way you react is you jump over it. Because if you don't, you're going to trip and fall on your face, right? So when we have sensual experiences, perceptual experiences with our physical senses, we have those so we can react to them and then engage with our environment better, right? You see someone, and with your vision, you can see that they're sad. And so you react to that by comforting them in some way, right? With our spiritual senses, when we sense things, it's important to react to them, do something with them, act on them, and do it intentionally. Like don't just react just kind of like haphazardly, like think it through. And that depends on interpretation, right? Good interpretations lead to good reactions with your senses. And then finally, it's important to master the nuances of perceptual memory. So that's kind of a grand phrase. Let me explain what I mean by that. So science has found a few things. One, we remember the stories we remember things as we tell them. So if you and someone else might have the same experience, and you remember it very differently. And you can like vividly call up the experience. You remember exactly how it went. You talk to someone else who was there, and they remember something completely differently. And the reason why is because our brains don't actually record the actual sensual, what we actually perceived. Our brain records the story. So if something happens and you don't really ever think about it again, your brain probably just won't remember it at all. But if something happens and you tell the story to people over and over again, you're going to remember it better, but you're going to remember it the way you told it, not what actually happened. Even if you just tell it to yourself over and over again. So when something happens that's more emotionally charged and upsets us, or we're really excited about it, we're more likely to tell it to ourselves or others over and again. And then as we do that, we commit it to memory, but we commit the story we tell to memory. And we tend to tell the story in the way that validates ourselves the best. It's a survival mechanism because we want to feel good about ourselves. So it's really important to be careful with that, because when we have a spiritual experience, we might go telling it over and over again, and we might distort our memory of what happened based on the way we tell it. And so I highly recommend writing these things down. Write them down quickly after they happen, because when you write them down, you have it committed to words shortly after it happened, and then and then you can always go back to that writing and not retell it in a way that changes your memory of what it is. There are people who have had spiritual experiences and recorded them, and then but they didn't record them till years later. And then when they recorded them, they said it differently. And then maybe they told a few different times and they said it differently. Like this is like true with like the Gospels in the Bible, right? You have the Gospels of the Bible that are these, records of what Jesus did, right? And the Gospels don't always agree with each other in little details in some ways that leads some people to like not believe them, not believe that anything they say at all. If you record something right away, you can avoid that problem. Because your memory will change over time and you will remember it differently. And then that can lead to discrediting the experience altogether because your memory kind of gets in the way of what actually happened. So it's good to record it quickly. And then you have a good record of it you can always go back to and have like a pure, clean record of it and remember it. So I want to end today with an invitation for all of you that watch this. For the next, yesterday was the first day of the perception season. Today's the second day. And then for the next 26 days, perception will be stronger. It'll be easier to be mindful and experience things with your full physical senses in the present moment. It's going to be easier to have spiritual perceptions. And I have tested this, and this is true. I've been practicing these virtues in their season. The virtues I listed at the top here. I've been practicing. Oh, not there. Sorry, right here. I've been practicing these 13 virtues in each of their respective seasons for about 4 years now. And what I have found is that every time the perception season comes around, when it gets to be the end of November and early of December, that my spiritual senses get deeply enhanced. And I'm able to meditate and see things inside see things with my eyes closed that are very vivid and help me figure out how to live my life. And it's profound and it's powerful. And so this is a great time to practice these principles. If you want to increase your spiritual perception, it's a great thing to focus on for the next 26 days. If you're I don't even know if I believe in spiritual anything, this is a great time to explore and see what you find out. And here's an exercise you can do to explore that I'm going to finish with. You can do with me, and you can try this exercise again. It's another way we can explore spiritual senses. So so go ahead and just kind of look at your hands, right? Close your eyes yet. Look at your hands. See where your hands are. Be aware of your hands with your physical vision. Now put your hands at your side. Let them just kind of hang there. Try not to let your hands touch any other part of your body. So you're gonna hang your hands so they're not touching your legs or anything else at all. Close your eyes. Be aware of where your hands are in space. Be aware of the space around your hands in space. Now let your perception of your hands as a physical object fade away. We're not worried about the shape of your hands. We're not worried what they look like. Just let that fade away. And just let your awareness of where your hands are in space stay. Without any awareness of your physical shape of your hands. And you can become aware, doing this, as I am right now, of the spiritual reality of your hands as a spirit or energy field. It's really exciting. And that's who you really are. And then you can expand this. Be aware of your arms and the space around your arms. And let the physical nature of your arms fade away so you're just aware of spirit and energy. You know where your hands and arms are in space without them being a physical object. Do the same thing with your neck and your chest. Go out to your whole torso and your legs and your feet. Bring in your head. And be aware of where your whole body is in space without looking at it. And be aware of the space around your body. And your body is like negative space inside the space that surrounds you. And just experience this. And be. Let the sensations you're having now blend with the way you normally experience every day with your physical senses. So that this idea of yourself and the idea of yourself that you normally experience become one. And then gradually open your eyes and see how that changes how you live your life. That's another exercise you can maybe try each day every now and again during this season and see how it changes you. And with any spiritual thing that you seek, remember, if you seek a spiritual experience because you want to prove something or because it makes you feel more special because you had it, please be cautious of that. The point of spiritual experience is to help yourself heal and help yourself connect to the oneness of everyone. Connect to higher powers, to the higher power. By incorporating spirituality into your practice of virtue and mental health, again, not the kind of spiritual practice that's like abusive religion, because that's going to hurt your mental health, but like true spiritual connectedness. By bringing that into your mental health practice, your mental health practice will become 10 or 100 times more effective. Let that be the reason to explore spirituality. And I'll give you an example of this. There was during one of the perception seasons, not this one, not this season, but a couple years ago during this very same season, there were some people in my life who I felt hostility towards. When I was around them, I'd been triggered in a way that led me to really not like being around these people. And when I was around these certain people, I would feel like hostility inside myself, and I'd feel like an aversion, like I wanted to be away from them. Like my body kind of went like this when I was around those people. Those people actually hadn't hurt me themselves, but they reminded me of some other triggers when I was around them. And I didn't want to feel this way towards those people anymore. And so what I did is I did a meditation practice where I adapted it from Joe Dispenza's book, which is actually referenced on the site here. So if you go to Hone Perception, you can find Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural. In this book, he has many meditation practices you can do. And one of those meditation practices that I found there talked about, I'm almost done here. Sorry, I see it's 8:00. One of the meditation practices there has you like get really deep into meditation and then be aware of a future where you already have the thing you're looking for. And so the future becomes a memory that's stronger than the past that conditioned you. And so you can be like pulled towards your future instead of triggered by your past. And so I did that, and I wanted to get along with these people. And so I went into this meditation with the intention of getting along better with these people. And as I did so, I had very vivid, vision experiences where I experienced myself in the future at some time on a picnic with these people. And I experienced myself riding in a school bus, sitting behind them. I have not yet had either of those experiences, but they were experiences in the future that haven't happened yet with those people. And as I experienced those things, I felt myself in the future feeling nothing but love and connection with these people. And I felt so much love and connection with them. And then when I came back to the present, I had a memory of already being healed with them that was vivid and real because of a spiritual vision kind of experience I had. And it helped me heal my relationship with these people because that memory of the future had so much love and gratitude and peace in it. That's the reason to have spiritual experiences, to connect us with other people. Well, that's all for today. Thank you all for your time today. And I'm going to, if anyone wants to add any questions or comments in the chat, do so now. And otherwise, I'm going to go. You're welcome, Brandon. You're welcome. I try to be vulnerable without making anyone else vulnerable. So I try to not put anyone else in the vulnerability seat without their consent. And I hope I did a good job with that. In the way I, tried to keep the other people involved confidential. Brandon has a question. How do physical and spiritual senses work together to enhance perception? It seems like many times you lean toward one or the other. I love that question. Okay. Our spiritual and physical senses definitely work together. And I think we put up a line between them that's kind of artificial. And I've actually reinforced that line in the way that I've talked today. And maybe I could apologize for that or something. Our spiritual and physical senses do work together. An example of this is that if you want to have a spiritual experience, just taking time to really engage with your physical senses in a patient way can actually help you get more into a spiritual state. So like sitting in a room and looking around and just like noticing what you see, what you hear, what you feel, just really patiently lean into that can actually help you slip into a state where you start having more spiritual experiences. And the opposite is also true. I know for me, and I've read the same report from many different people. There's a book called The Field that I read that's really good. And the field, they look at research into like scientific research into spirituality is what the field looks at. And in that book, they describe something that I've experienced, which is that oftentimes when people meditate and get really deep into spiritual experiences and then open their eyes and go back to normal life, the colors seem more vivid. And that's true for me. My physical senses just seem to experience the world in a more profound way after I've had spiritual experiences. And ultimately, spiritual experiences are about connection, right? So the ultimate spiritual experience is, in some ways, is just connecting with other people. And in bringing both your spiritual and physical senses to bear is profound for that, right? Really see them with your eyes. Really hear them with your ears. Really feel them as you hug them. And really feel their spirit and their energy in your heart while you're with them. Like experience their emotions with them with empathy. The spiritual and physical world come together to experience people. Does that answer your question, Brandon? And anyone else can throw a question or comment in right now too if you want to before I was going to get off, but we can do this. You're welcome. All right, I think I'm going to go now. Good luck to everyone on your perception journey this season. I love you, and I hope that all of you will just be more present in a spiritual and physical way with everything you do. So enjoy one season at a time.